been in 4 different states in the last week. Doing a lot of speaking. I'm a little nervous today. I don't know why. But what I want to start with is just where this all originated today. Is that okay? I'm from Australia, if you can't tell. I grew up there in Canberra, Australia, and my mother said to me at a really young age, "You're really good at sports, so you won't be any good at school." So when somebody tells you that, what do you focus on? Sports. Focus on your sports. I had no idea there's actually a natural law behind that. It's the law of attraction. Law of attraction is whatever you focus on grows. So I focused on sports and actually I played a lot of rugby league. I don't know if you know that, but that sport, it's not rugby union, it's rugby league. So I played a lot of rugby league, played a lot of baseball, and played tennis. But my dad was this phenom tennis player, and my older cousin played pro, my younger cousin played pro, I ended up playing pro. My uncle was at one point over all of junior tennis in Australia. So because I was in that environment, what sport did I go into? Tennis. I'm going to show you as we go through this today, that was probably not the wisest decision. I actually loved baseball the most. But in Australia, no one had really ever done anything with baseball. And I didn't really like school. So I had a choice to make when I was about 13, 14. Which sport was I going to try and make a living out of? So I chose tennis. Worked hard, trained hard, because I always thought practice makes what? That's what I thought. I've since learned that is one of the most erroneous beliefs of the human race. Practice does not make perfect at all. But I ended up training hard, graduated from year 12 in Australia, and I got selected on an Australian team. So I was 17-year-old, and I flew on a trip. It was literally, remember the flight, it was a 21-hour direct flight from where I was from to England. Literally, the quickest route from Australia to England is over the North Pole. And so that's the direction you go to get there. Landed there. I'm from Australia, and so this is important just to give you the details. So playing a lot on artificial grass or grass courts. So that's a fast surface. Even if you don't understand the greatest sport that's ever been invented, okay, all wisdom and knowledge, guys, comes from tennis in Australia. Okay? So all my skills were built around quick, fast, explosive points. We go overseas, it's the end of the winter there, so we're indoors on really fast surface. First month was actually in France. So I did really well at first. I'm living the dream, I'm doing everything I wanted to do. I'm thinking, I'm making this happen. It's all coming together for me. I have my name up in lights at one point, I got a really good ranking, and I'm thinking, this is great. Then we go from France, and we drive across Europe to Austria for the first outdoor tournament of the year, which was on slow red clay. So if you don't understand tennis, that's going from fast to slow. And it wasn't even a pro tournament, it was just a local town tournament. And I got my name called out, I go and get the balls, I've got 6 rackets in my bag, and the guy I'm playing's got 2 rackets. I walk on the court thinking, I got this guy. And I had no idea what I was doing. I lost for the first and only time in my life, 6-0, 6-0. Double bagel, we call it. And what happened at that moment, which I can look back now, is I started thinking the wrong way. I started focusing on the wrong things. I started focusing on what not to do. But what I'd always been taught is, you got to work, practice makes perfect, so when the going gets tough, what do? Work harder. So I trained harder and harder, and I got worse and worse. I kept pushing myself on the tennis court to the point I'd almost throw up. But I was getting worse and worse. My mind was going the wrong direction. After 5 months on the tour of not doing well, came home to playing tournaments in Australia. Spent another 6 months in Australia, but I started losing to people I'd never lost to before. I was in a bad spiral. After a year and a half of this, I get this strange guy calls me, and he says, come and play tennis for me over here. And so he says, it's the stone cold sober school in the country, and it is the cheapest education there is, something like that. And so as I'm thinking, okay, this is a good option. As I'm hanging up the phone, he says, by the way, you can't drink or smoke. Which school am I talking about? I'm talking about BYU. So long story short is I end up at BYU. And at the university, it was winter, so we're indoors. And one of the first days we're on the courts, and I'm from Australia. So if you know Australians, what do we do? What do we known as? My friends would literally come and watch me play tennis at 10 a.m. in the morning as an excuse to drink beer while I'm playing. So we're good at drinking beer and we're really good at swearing, okay? So I can swear in every country there is because I've traveled the world. And so I come here and I'm in the indoor courts. I'm on the 4th court. And I know though at BYU you can't take the Lord's name in vain. So I'm trying to, well, they told me, sorry, that's wrong. I knew I had to watch my language. So I'm on the 4th court, I'm getting mad at myself because I'm going in this cycle where I'm interfering with my own performance. And I get mad, so I yell out and take the Lord's name in vain because where I'm from, that's not bad. I'm 4th court, indoor courts. I turn around, everyone stopped playing tennis. No one's playing tennis. And the head coach is at the end of the building with 2 fingers doing this to me. And so I walked and no one started playing tennis either the whole walk to meet the coach. He took me in the room and told me that you obviously can't do that at BYU. So anyway, that was my first experience here. I almost left and went home because I didn't think BYU or America was the place for me. But anyway, I ended up staying, thinking I'd get a fresh start, and thinking I would be able to just go back to where I was before. But there was no change, because once you start thinking the wrong way, what's happened? You figure you've got the wrong patterns. One day I got sent up to the counseling center because I got so mad at myself. And the coach sent me up there, and I went and met a counselor. And I sat down with this counselor, and I told him my story, and he says, here's your problem. You set really high expectations. You fall short, and you get down on yourself when you don't achieve what you want. Then you get ticked off and set even higher expectations. Then you get down on yourself, then you get mad, then you focus again, and you're just in this vicious cycle. It's called being a perfectionist. How many perfectionists do we have here? We have a lot of perfectionists in today's day. And so as I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking, this guy's finally figured out what I'm going through. And then, nothing. Felt like the longest 20 seconds of my life. He was really good at telling me what was wrong, and had no idea of telling me what to do. And so I end up switching out of accounting because my dad was an accountant. I'm going to tie this back to how we conform to our environments. Again, what was my dad's sport? Tennis. So what did I go into? Tennis. Can you see how we conform? My dad was an accountant. So what was I going to go into? Accounting. I switched out of accounting into psychology because I wanted to try and figure out performance. I wanted to figure out how you really do it. Not just talk about it, but how do you really do it? I've always been fascinated by that, I realized since the age of 12. When I was playing rugby, I still remember the guy that was this great athlete. His name was Stephen Mendel. Why was he so good? Was he just born better than me? Was he born better than the rest? And that's been the journey I've been on. It's called performance psychology. I ended up getting my degree in psychology, went home for a couple of months, and then the University of BYU asked me to come back and be an assistant tennis coach. I did, and as I told you, my uncle was over all the junior tennis, so what happened with recruiting? Super easy for me to recruit, so I recruited all these Australians. We were 5 in the country with 4 freshmen. So they all thought I was this great recruiter. Well, actually, it was my uncle, it wasn't me. So I spent 2 years with the women's program. We were 5 in the country. Then they switched me to the men to help try and rebuild them, which I was able to do that with my uncle's help. Then they asked me to take back over the women's program as a head coach. So early on, I did again to be high performing. What do? We work hard. So we weren't ranked, worked hard. We ended up 32 the first year, lost in the championship. Next year, though, I kept thinking there's got to be an edge here. And I started doing my master's in psychology. I was stumbling on some science that was having an impact. And one of them was around if you have a cognitive structured program, how you can create skills. And so I started using that with my athletes. We won the championship the next year. And then I was finishing my master's at that point, and the science was telling me you don't just recruit the best physical athlete, you've got to get people with the right mindset. So I stopped my normal coaching, my recruiting approach, and just trying to get the best athlete. And I stopped wearing BYU clothes when I was traveling. My wife would come with me, and I'd send her to sit in stands to talk to the parents, to get a read on the parents. And I would be like stalking behind trees and wearing non-logo clothes to try and get a read on not just the athlete, but the mindset. Number one thing we've found, I'm not going to go through this today, so I'm just going to give it to you right away. Number one, key to success, 76% is self-motivation. 76% is self-motivation.
Yes.
Athletic ability is only 5%. That just blew me away. What does that tell us? Is success, are you born with success, or do you have to build it? You gotta build it. But if you have people with the right mindset, what can you do? So we started bringing in athletes that weren't the best anymore, that were just, they're still talented, but we took athletes that were like 5 instead of number 1. And we brought them in and we just started working hard on creating skills. And as we got them in the right mindset, we just started developing talent like crazy. As that happened then, US Olympic team asked me to start working with them, and then that led to switching from aerialists to mogul, to the snowboarders, and then that spread to, a long story short is, I just love studying people, and my dad always told me, if you do what you love, what happens? To this day, I'm on retainer with an NBA team. I work with NFL players. I worked with the Cleveland Cavaliers 3 years ago. They reached out to me when LeBron James, anybody heard of LeBron James?
Oh yeah.
LeBron James,
Owen hasn't.
when he came back from Miami to Cleveland, they had over $100 million payroll. Greatest basketball player in the world, but what was happening to the culture and everyone playing together. They weren't doing well. They're coming into town in February that year and they were struggling. It was actually the end of January. So I went and did a training with them. And I'm going to show you what the science is here in a minute, but basically we had to switch their mindset. Ended up being the hottest team for the rest of the league. I started working with some of their players and we ended up winning a championship, which I'll go through in detail the science behind that. But I'm telling you this because I am shocked. Throughout my career, I am blown away by the things people are able to do when you're in the right mindset. And I probably won't tell you everything tonight because you probably won't believe it if I told you. It is unbelievable what we are capable of doing when you get in the right mindset. So first I want to start with, here's the science. So this is, I ended up writing a book, The Fearless Mind, which I got to be honest too, I graduated, I ended up finishing my master's and going into applied performance psych at the University of Utah. So I was a full-time employee at BYU and I was studying at the University of Utah. So those of you that are out of state, you don't realize those are massive rivals. So I used to have to change my sweats from those Smurf-colored blue sweats and turn them inside out so I didn't get beaten up on the campus. But I did end up getting my PhD in performance psychology. I'm not a psychologist in sport. There's a lot of psychologists that want to work in sport. I'm a performance psychologist, meaning my background is in the application. And this is what I've learned. And I'll even, before I go here, right around the time I started my PhD, my son, I married and my son was born. And he had a stroke at birth. Yeah. So when you have a stroke at birth, what's happened to the brain? There's damage done to the brain. And my wife and I went up to meet with these doctors at the University of Utah, and they said he's going to struggle at school, and he'll probably never be able to play sports. Well, that just ticked us off. And so my wife got him into a speech therapist. If you met him today, you probably would barely notice he has a slight speech impediment. You wouldn't notice if I hadn't told you this. But I started studying, because I was early in my field, I came across a field called neuroplasticity. So if you can write that down, neuroplasticity. And what the science of neuroplasticity is from, in 1989 was the first fMRI machine. You all know what an MRI machine is, right? A magnetic resonance imaging, where you take pictures of the body to see what ligaments and what's going on. An fMRI machine is a functional magnetic resonance imaging, which means we can take pictures of the brain. So guys, this is not theory. This is absolute, what I'm going to show you. We can see it. It's not open for debate. We can see the neurons firing. We can see the brain at the cellular level. And it's amazing what we do when we take ownership of it. And we really learn to take control of the mind. We're all being born with a neuroprocessor. At birth, we're born with a neural processor, meaning thinking comes for free. When you're born with the ability to think. My wife and I, we have a cabin up in Idaho. We went up there earlier this summer for our anniversary. And we took the old truck up there because we were taking a load of furniture up for the cabin. And we decided to go up to West Yellowstone. She's actually coming back from there right now. And so we went up to West Yellowstone. We're driving up around the top of it, come around the corner, and there's barricades and and ranges there and people everywhere. And there's a black bear in the wild. And you're all probably going, who cares? You've seen a black bear in the zoo. No. It's a different creature. Because when you see a tiger or a bear in the zoo, what is it doing to earn its food each day? It's nothing. That's entitlement. What's happened mentally when you don't have to work at things. You spent today talking about this, being healthy. What we're going to talk about is being mentally strong, mental performance. If you don't work hard mentally, what happens to the brain? It gets weak, it atrophies. If you don't work hard mentally, you're sitting around doing nothing. A bear in the wild is not sitting around doing nothing. A bear in the wild is always doing what? The swagger this bear had, it had body language like, I don't give a flying crap about anyone else. I'm the king of the food chain here. In the swagger of this thing, it is different. Any of you guys in there, do you make money? You guys make money for a living?
You earn it.
You earn it. None of you work for the U.S. Mint, as far as I know. We don't make money, you earn money. And that is so profound when you understand that. The more you understand you earn money, that means you've got to engage. When you earn something, the mind is engaged. But because most of us are born with the ability to think, and we don't understand that, whose thoughts occupy your mind from the time you're born? Yours or somebody else's? Most people don't take ownership of their mind, so therefore whose thoughts occupy your mind? Someone else's. When I get up here and yell, practice makes, you all yell back what? Perfect. That's not true. It's the most erroneous belief there is. You've been told that, you've regurgitated it so many times, you think it's truth, but it's not yours. And that's what conformity is. We allow other people's thoughts to occupy our mind. We need to take ownership of our own thoughts. And so let's go through this. So this is the brain, obviously. At birth, what does the brain look like? Is it as wrinkly? No, it's just a clean, flat, smooth surface for the most part. The older, or I should say, the more mature you get. See, age and maturity are two separate things. The more you mature, what's happening to the neural pathways? They're being developed. The neural pathways are being developed as we age. So this is how the brain really looks. Sigmund Freud drew it with the top 10% as the conscious, the bottom 90s, the subconscious. It's not really how it is, but that's how we think of it. The top 10% is really the outer part of the brain. The top 10% is the conscious. It's a neural processor. It's a neural processor. It's always reverberating. Okay? The science actually says neurons that fire together wire together. So if you're taking notes, neurons that fire together wire together. Neurons that fire. I want to go through this at the cellular level. René Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. We can take it deeper than that now. Neurons that fire together wire together. See, if it's not your thoughts, whose neurons are firing? Yours or somebody else's?
Someone else's.
Somebody else's. Then what the science says now, that's what creates a pattern. So can you also write that word down? This is why you're hearing the word patterns all the time now in our language, because it's coming from the neuroscience. So whatever when you fire a neuron, you're creating a pattern of thought. Now the next thing, this is probably the most important thing I could say tonight. Here's the biggest thing that just is mind-blowing to me. What that means, in other words, whatever pattern you reinforce the most entrenches the neural pathways. Simple. What that means is whatever you think about the most is who you will become. The mind is not a morality meter. You don't think guilty, you feel guilty. Whatever you think about the most is who you become, because it creates the patterns. So see, if you don't take ownership of your own thoughts, everyone else's thoughts are going to occupy your mind. Now what's always on your mind? By age 65, where will you be? We all come into this world different, and then we leave looking like who? It's called conformity. Here's the problem with conformity. I'm going to scare you for a minute. Because we all tend to conform, or at least the research shows a massive percentage of us conform. If we conform, we all live paycheck to paycheck. Because that's what everyone else does. Here's the average. 50% of this country ends up with $400 in the bank account at age 65, because we all do what? Conform. Paycheck to paycheck. On top of that, when you wake up in the morning and it's not your thoughts, it's not your goals, whose goals are they? Somebody else's. But think about this. If you take ownership of your mind, if you take control of your mind, when you wake up in the morning, whose thoughts are on your mind? Yours. Now, whose goals are you going to set? Yours. And where will you end up by age 65? See, this is the stuff I'm passionate about. I have some people where I live that know what I do on the MBA level, and they're always asking me to work with them, and I kind of avoid them, to be honest. I always run away and just get out of the way. And finally, this one guy kept after me, he cornered me one day, and he says, "Why don't you want to work with my son?" I said, "Here's why. Because he's not going to really value what I'm teaching him. Because if they don't earn it, what's the value? What are they going to really do?" He's like, no, you'll do whatever you ask him to do. I said, yeah, but my goal is, my job, my responsibility isn't just to help him be a good basketball player this next game or this week or for the rest of the season. My responsibility is to make sure he's successful until age when? Till he dies, to age 65 or older. The things I'm going to ask him to do, I'm going to ask him to do it every hour of every day of every week for the rest of his life. Is he really committed to do that? He's like, he'll do whatever you ask him to do. And I said, well, here's the other thing. I'm expensive. I charge a lot. Well, why do you think I charge a lot with the nature of what I do? If I don't charge a lot, are people going to value it? No. And this is the mind. This is the mind. This, to me, is more important than your teeth. If you don't value it, are you really going to put the effort in? He's like, so how much are you? And I told him, and he went quiet, which tells you what. I said, I told you it was going to be a bit. And he says, yeah, that's a lot for a session. I said, it's not a session. These are things I need him to learn for the rest of his life. And that's what I want to get into today. The conscious mind is where it all begins. We're born with a processor. The subconscious is the 90%. But on the research is going over this over and over again. The subconscious is an empty template at birth. Meaning it stores memories. That's all the subconscious does. It simply stores memories. Knowledge is stored as a memory. Skills are stored as a memory. There are no memories at birth. I love this, guys. What does that mean? It's a clean slate. We have potential at birth to do anything. It is completely up to us. We have unlimited potential at birth. It's up to us to fill it with the patterns and the skills that are best for us. My son now is 18. I got into this field and I started working through the neuroscience. And again, by the way, before I go there, the brain is the hardware. The mind is the software. The brain and the mind are two separate activities. Brain and mind. OCD, high anxiety, depression are mental issues, not brain issues. You're not born with depression. There's no genetic behind depression. Dyslexia, brain or mind? It's a brain issue because you're born with it. My daughter was born with that. Not all my kids are messed up. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. But she was born with dyslexia, and she had learning disabilities, so she was bullied horribly at school. So has some learned depression. She's on meds. She sees a neuroscientist each week that I really trust. And the day that she doesn't take her meds, what happens that day? She's a little bit off, which tells you what? Is it changing the mind or just impacting the brain? Just impacting the brain. And so what we're doing with her, we worked hard with her for the last 3 years to work hard mentally. As we worked hard mentally to overcome the depression, she's doing great. She's back in school, in a brick and mortar school from being homeschooled, and she's crushing it. My son, by the way, is now 18, played on the basketball team, played on the tennis team, and plays rugby, and is a freshman at BYU in his second week.
Wow.
So what can the mind do? I'm super proud of him because he's had to overcome and what he'll continue to overcome. And just this week, he's still a little lost because he doesn't know what his purpose is yet. And while sitting there, his mind is a little bit locked, and I'm trying to help him unlock it. One of the things I said is, you're a sophomore at BYU. You still have unlimited potential. So let's switch into that. How do we get the most out of ourselves? There's an old way of thinking. We've got to be careful of the old traditional ways. This is the classical formula for performance. Potential plus training equals performance. This has been around for 100 years. Potential plus training equals performance. I thought I had potential. I know I trained hard, but I didn't get where I wanted to go. To me, there was always something missing there. As I've been studying this, I found a piece of research by Wolfgang Ritzdorf. He's a German physiologist. And what he believed, we all have potential, but we got to get rid of the interference. So his theory was potential minus interference. I love that. I don't know if that resonates with you, but I love that. Because what I realized in my own life, in my career, I was the one getting in the way of myself. The 1 month before I came over here to BYU, one of my close friends I'd grown up playing tennis against, he beat me 7-6, 7-6, 7-6. So again, if you don't understand the greatest game that's ever been invented, 7-6, 7-6, 7-6 means what?
Very close.
That's very close. Even if you don't understand tennis, how close is that? 6 years later, he's #1 in the world, winning his second U.S. Open. And I'm finishing a mediocre career at BYU. His name's Patrick Rupp. Went on to #1 in the world. What that taught me is it's not physical. I've always been able to move quicker and have better technique than him. But he was so much better than me mentally. So anyway, I love this theory by Wolfgang Ritzdorf, but we still got to train, because if you're not training, how are you going to get better? So I stole his idea and I created this formula: potential. We all have potential. We got to train, but practice makes what? Practice makes permanent. Practice makes permanent. We got to train the right things, and we got to get rid of the interference. It is unbelievable how much in life we are the ones that get in the way of ourselves. We cause our own interference. We create the doubts and the fears. Fear, how well we do with fear will determine our future. I want to go into the science of this. So I'm just wondering how many stories I should jump into. Sorry. We'll come back to that story. Okay, potential. Love this. We all have potential again. What do we have potential for? We have unlimited potential, but I don't know if we have potential for anything if we really break into the science. This study is by Erickson. Malcolm Gladwell has quoted this research in multiple books. This was a massive study on achievement. Chess playing, singing, dance, all forms of athletics. And what they found in the end, how we're born, our innate abilities, is an indication of what we will not do. I'll say that again. Our genetics, our DNA, how we are born, our innate abilities is an indication of what we will not do. Natural selection. Mother Nature, natural selection. I was 12, 13, pretty stocky, medium build, playing rugby, tennis, and baseball. And then I shot up and grew, and I was 6'2", 162 pounds. Have you ever seen a 6'2", 162-pound rugby league player? Because when you're bent in half, what's your competency like when you're bent in half? Can you see, nature was actually my mother wouldn't let me sign up for another year. I think Mother Nature and mothers are connected. We want to protect our kids from that. So what happens is another example. A guy I work with to this day, he's 6'7", 275 pounds. Okay. His name's Bronson Kafusi. Plays football right now for the New York Jets. Say his mother loves figure skating. Could he have gone into figure skating? Would his range of motion allowed him to be confident at figure skating? See, this is the research I love. We don't like things we don't feel confident at. Mentally, if you don't like things, what's happening mentally if you don't like things? You start focusing on what not to do. Okay? You start focusing on what not to do. I'm going to go back for a second. I always do this. I'm sorry, this jumps around. I probably should have this slide here. Let's go back to that conscious mind. The conscious mind's a neural processor. It's always processing. Does it ever stop processing? No, unless you're dead, it's always processing. This is the law of occupied space. Positive and negative thoughts cannot occupy the space at the same time. Okay? Positive and negative thoughts cannot occupy the space at the same time. Your conscious mind is binary. You're either proactive or reactive. This is mindset right at the very beginning. Dr. Professor Carol Dweck wrote the book Mindset. She's a Stanford personality professor. She's been a professor her whole life. She's 71 years of age. She says we either have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. I love that. Alfred Bernier is a sociologist 200 years ago, said you're either a learner or a non-learner. We're either task-orientated or we're ego-orientated. I like to say we're either acting or being acted upon, or we're either approaching life or avoiding life. They can't coexist at the same time. What I've learned is when you start focusing on what not to do, what happens to your mind? You'll stop engaging. You keep focusing on what not to do, now what gets in the subconscious? What memories are reinforced? What not to do. What's going to happen to your performance? And so let's stop saying positive and negative for a minute, because I did that just because you know that language. It actually isn't positive and negative. You're probably the first person that's ever going to tell you this. You don't want to think positive. Let that reverberate in your head. It's not good to think positive. Because if you're trying to think positive, you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. Fixed. You're not trying to think positive. Because the neuroprocessor is always doing what? It's always moving. So if you're trying to think positive, what are you trying to do to the processor? To fix it. The mind is not built to be locked in. It's built to think. So we don't want to think positive. Positive and negative, you go to any motorized vehicle, you're going to have red and black, right? Positive and negative. I wish they'd switch it around and make the negative red and the black positive, because University of Utah's red. I'm just kidding. But the truth is, positive and negative is energy. Okay? Positive and negative is energy. We want to control our energy, and we definitely want to have positive energy in life. But if you're always trying to think positive, what do you do in your mind? Is the world positive? No. This is how many Gen X's are in this room. I'm a Gen X. How many Gen X's? Most of you? No, not most. There's a bunch of millennials in here. See, what happened with baby boomers were dependent. Dependent on the man. Baby boomer generation, everyone was working for large organizations. So what mindset were we in? We're in a mindset of, it was a hierarchy. We needed to please our boss to move up. And so that was the mindset then. And then the next generation, Gen X's, we were fiercely independent. Does that make sense? We were called the latchkey kids, because who were we coming home to? No one. Single home or empty home. So we're fiercely independent. And we lived through the oil crisis and the threat of war, and we lived through this era, and the infrastructure from those large organizations were collapsing. No more pension plans. So what do we want for our kids? And so we created the positive. And we gave everyone a trophy for participating. In the meantime, what have we done to our kids? What we did is create an environment where they feel like to be successful, everything needs to be positive. The problem is the real world really positive? No. So how do you deal with it when you're not positive, when everything isn't positive? See, the spectrum we want to think about is not positive or negative. The spectrum is whether you're proactive or reactive. The spectrum is whether you're additive or subtractive. And so what I'm saying is we want to be very careful of subtractive thoughts. Because what does the word subtract really mean? So if you have subtractive thoughts, those are thoughts of don't do this, don't do that, I didn't do this. When you're telling yourself that, what patterns are getting in the subconscious? What has to happen in your performance? What has to happen if you have subtractive thoughts? Yep, it has to get worse. You have to get worse. That's what happened to me. I started focusing on what not to do. You're tearing yourself down. Now, additive means what? Addition means add. So when we have additive thoughts, though, what are we capable of doing? See, there's the key. We want to be proactive thinkers. Because if we're proactive thinkers, what happens to dealing with reality? Let's role play for a minute. I'm driving up here, coming up to speak up, and I want to have a positive mindset. And I get in a car accident. Awesome! Car accident, $1,000 of damage. This is great. Not going to be able to get there. Oh man, this is great. I got in a car accident. That's technically what thinking positive is. Positive is always looking at the world in a positive way. Well, what if I'm proactive? Get in a car accident, what do you do straight away? 911, call my wife, call David. I'm taking what? Immediately when you're proactive.
Taking action.
You're solving problems. And when you can solve problems, how well do you deal with challenges? And there's the magic behind solving problems. Always being solution-based, not problem-based. Always being proactive. So you're always building. You're always learning. When you're positive, I'm not saying positive is bad. Again, we all want to have positive energy. But if you're trying to think positive, you're always trying to put a fake spin on things. And our mind struggles with that. I could train for hours how to hit a backhand and do everything I can, and then at the last minute I take my eye off the ball and it goes over the back fence. If I'm trying to be positive, how do I deal with that? That's not positive. That's terrible. So how do you deal with it? We want to be proactive thinkers. We want to have positive energy, but we want to be proactive thinkers. Always looking for the solution. Okay, so let's keep going. So how's the first way we do it? Right back to here, we don't like things that we're not confident at. So as soon as you're mentally focusing on what you don't like, what patterns are getting in your subconscious? Subtractive. What's going to happen in your competency? It's going to go down. If you love something or you like something, what's your competency like? See, if you love something, are you subtractive or additive if you love something? Additive. So what's happening to your skills quickly?
Going up.
You see how fast you can learn when you're in the right mindset. Let's keep going. How many of you hate your spouse? Is that why you got married? If we keep going here, see if you love something, look at this formula. If you love something, what is your mind? Where is your thought patterns? They're always directed towards what? What you like, what you're doing, what's happening. So how fast are you developing skills? That's why the first thing I'd like you to focus on today is you've got to ask yourself all the time, what do I love about what I do? Can you write that down? Ask yourself all the time, what do I love about what I do? The other thing about love, when you ask yourself this question, love is a powerful emotion. And so when it's the affect, when you ask yourself what you love, what's happening to those indentions of those neural pathways? It's the law of occupied space. So when you're occupying it with that sort of emotion, what's going to occupy the space? So the pathways are developed fast. If you focus on what you love, the attention is on what to do, not on what not to do. So let's go back to Bronson Kafusi. He goes to figure skating. He doesn't have the range of motion. His mum wants him to go, but he doesn't have competency from day one. Where's his mind already? He keeps going back because his mum loves it, but where's his mind? He goes to figure skating lessons for 10 years. Never in the right mindset. How good is he after 10 years?
Terrible.
He's not going to improve, no matter how much he goes, because he's in the wrong mindset. But he's in the right mindset, so what is, at 6'7", 275 pounds, what sport could he play though? Let's go basketball. What else could he play?
Football.
Can you see that nature selects, great, rugby, yeah. Can you see nature selects us at what not to do, but is there still a lot of choices we have? I was 6'2", 162 pounds. What choices do I have? Tennis, right? What else? I was catcher in baseball. Not too many guys a bit like me that are catcher in baseball. So nature select me, sorry?
Australian rules football.
Great, yeah, Aussie rules. Yeah, I could do that. So there's still choices, but which is the right choice? Bronson went to BYU actually, both for football and basketball. 6'7", 275 pounds. Which sport is better? What's the problem with basketball, really? He's too thick. He's big and he's too thick, so what's his ability to get up and get it high? So that actually wasn't the best choice for him. So he only played a year and then went football. But what now? Let's keep going. So can you see how far you take this? This is the seats on the bus, like John Collins talks about. Now, what position in football? But first they put him at linebacker. But he was too long and a little bit slow. So then we moved him to defensive end. But what position, how should he play defensive end? He's long and quick.
On the
So
edges.
then he is a pass rush. Can you see, you just keep building around your strengths. Where do you end up? It's the same when you build a business. When you build a business, you figure out what you love the most. You figure out what you love the most. As you need to hire new people, who do you hire? What are you hiring for? What seats on the bus are you hiring for? The ones you don't like. You make sure you keep putting yourself on the right seat in the bus that's best for you, and you hire people for the seats you don't like. What continually happens then? Happened to me. I did the science, I wrote the book, I get recruited from the university to the business world. I was building a big business. As I'm going, people that are in the business with me, like, we got to get you to stop coaching. You need to start managing others. As I start doing it, what did I get my PhD in? Psychology. Did I get my PhD in business management? Do I want to run a business? So I start to run a business. I don't love that. Where does my mind start to go when I don't love it? I'm being honest with you guys. Within 2 weeks, I start thinking about, how do I get out of this? Maybe I'll go get a job with one of the NBA teams, or I'm already thinking about, how do I get out of it, instead of putting my mental resources into what I'm doing. That's not what I wanted to do. I want to coach people. Because coaches change people's lives, guys. I've been waiting to build up to this. I love coaching. I love it. Because coaching changes people. Because we go back to the brain, good coaches change people where? Not just the conscious, but they change people out there at the subconscious, which is your soul. The subconscious is the soul of a human being. If you don't change the subconscious, are you changing people? No. You're not. There are no bad students, only bad teachers. A teacher is a coach. A parent is a coach. Coaches are having a massive impact on people. So we got to coach them the right way. We got to stop people focusing on what not to do and focus on what? What to. Here's the 2 erroneous beliefs of the human race. First, practice is not perfect. Number 2, you've been taught your whole life to be successful, you've got to learn from what? If you focus on your mistakes, what's going to occupy the space? If you're always living your life focusing on mistakes, you're going to make a mistake. We don't want to learn from our mistakes. We want to learn from our successes. Let's go through that. So first, we've got to focus on what we love. Once we figure out what we love, we're going to find our core strengths. Now, once you know your strengths, now we've got to train. But practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. One of the old beliefs, again, is work hard on everything. But if you work hard on everything, what are you going to remember? Nothing. You're good at everything and great at. So we've got to work on skills, but what skills should we work on? The skills that are best for us. Yes. We're all born different. I like Sigmund Freud. It's a bit of a whack job, actually, Sigmund Freud, but I love Sigmund Freud. One of the things he said is he had this whole theory around, he thought everything came back to sex, which I think he just takes out way too far. But he did say, he said this though, he said, we all come to this planet with unique talents. And one of the keys to being happy in life is finding what those unique core strengths are. I love that. I've seen that to be true. I think we got to really spend time and help people to ask, what do you love the most? And then when you ask them that, they will figure out their core competencies. And that's what makes us special. There's been no research, no direct correlation to human performance ever until this year. The only correlation to human performance was IQ, and that was an inverse correlation. Which, what does that mean if it's inverse correlation? The higher the IQ, which is book smarts, what happens to the actual doing? Lower the doing. And I think the reason why is there's just too many thoughts and they get in the way of themselves. Those that don't do, teach, right? But in 2018, there's been a research that was completed, a 30-year study, which is the gold standard in research, from the University of Pennsylvania, and has found a strong correlation to human performance. Here's what it is: cognitive control, also known as grit. When you have control over your mind, what this science, it goes pretty deep, but what this means is if you're in control of your mind, what happens to using what you have? There's the key to success. What the science is saying is, it's not being like somebody else that makes you successful. The more you try to be like others is a path to failure. Because the more you try to be like others, whose skills do you develop? Theirs. Roger Federer is the greatest tennis player to ever play. Yeah, I love Roger. My son played tennis. If I try to get my son to be like Roger, what am I dooming him to? Failure. Because is he built like Roger? No. Does he move like Roger? No. Can we learn from others? Sure. But the more we try to be like others, what's happening to our control? The key to success is getting the most out of yourself. The key to success is figuring out how to unlock your own abilities. We got to keep learning, but we got to figure out the skills that are best for who? For us. So think about this again. The key to success is how well you get the most out of yourself. So start with your strengths, what you love. Same in marriage. The more you focus on the strengths of your wife or your spouse, the better your marriage will be. The more you focus on the strengths of the state of Utah, the more you're going to enjoy it here. When people are always focusing on what their spouse doesn't do, people are always focusing on what Utah doesn't give them in the winter, that's the path to failure. All you have to do if you live here is go and spend a little bit of money and go four-wheeling, go snowmobiling every winter, and you're going to be waiting for the snow to come. You focus on what the state does give you, not what it doesn't. Focus on what your spouse brings to the relationship, not what it doesn't. Focus on what you do have, not what you don't have, and build from there. Build skills around what you do have. The key to success, I did the NBA draft for the Utah Jazz last year and the Milwaukee Bucks, and there was a guy in the profiling by the name of Donovan Mitchell that had the best score. Yeah. So I told the Jazz to draft him, and I told the Bucks to draft him. How good has he been as a rookie?
Best.
So this year, the Milwaukee Bucks are like, can you find another Donovan Mitchell? I'm like, no. Because everybody's path is what? Different. And to whoever embraces their journey the best, that will be the most successful. It's not about being somebody else, it's about your own personal narrative. That subconscious I'm talking about is where you store your memories. Whose memories do you really want there? Yours or somebody else's? There's the key. Creating your own journey. Sorry. That jumped. So practice makes permanent. So we got to have potential. How do we maximize our potential? Always ask yourself what? What do I love the most? What do I love the most about my spouse? What do I love the most about my job? What do I love the most about where I live? Second, you've got to work on skills. Whose skills?
Yours.
Your own. Third, we've got to get rid of the interference out of our lives. So everybody's familiar with this, right? You've probably done this before. Some of you look at me like, no. So this is the Mona Lisa. Can you look at that for me? Visualize that as good as you can. Keep your eyes on the Mona Lisa for 10 seconds. Really try and visualize that. Okay? Close your eyes for me and keep visualizing the Mona Lisa. Don't think of the Mona Lisa as a big, bushy, hairy mustache. Open up your eyes. What'd you all do? You see how the mind works. It's the law of occupied space. The law of attraction and the law of occupied space. Whatever you focus on, law of attraction, is going to occupy this space. So if I'm playing golf and I'm on a downward swing and the thought pops in my head, don't hit it in the water, what do? You start to get a sore throat and you say, don't get sick. What happens? The more you focus on what not to do, the more it's occupying the space. The central nervous system is at the base of your brain, top of your spine. The central nervous system controls everything you do. It doesn't understand the word don't. It doesn't process. So when you say to the central nervous system, don't touch the hot plate, what does it do? All it heard is what?
Touch the hot plate.
Touch the hot plate. You can't talk to the central nervous system in what not to do. It doesn't understand that. So instead, if we're going to be mentally strong, we've got to train the mind to do what? What to do, not what not to do. What to do. Not only do we want to train it on what to do, we've got to be specific. So I just want to check the time, make sure holy time flies. Okay. This is really kind of important to me. You have some sheets there with you, do you? So you have the roadmap and you have the pictorial at all? I forgot we had that with us today. You just hold that pictorial up with some of the drawings. Yeah, so the pictorial is the one with all of the pictures. Can you look at that pictorial and look at the top middle box on that pictorial? I should have got that out at the beginning, I apologize. But you can take that with you anyway. It took me a long time actually to get that done. Can everybody see that pictorial? See that top middle? What is that? I'm getting you to look at. Pattern hierarchy. What is the worst patterns there? What's at the bottom? Subtractive patterns. Those are the worst patterns there are. The next pattern up is what?
Negative.
What's the difference? See, when you're focused on what not to do, it's dangerous because the subtractive thoughts are actionable negative thoughts.
Right.
They're in action.
Right.
So when that pattern is getting in the subconscious, what are you doing even when you're not even consciously aware that you're doing it?
Repeat. Okay.
You're sabotaging yourself, you're interfering with your own performance. Let's go up. So negative thoughts aren't that bad. Negative thoughts are just, oh, it stinks since we've had ash in the air today. Is that doing any damage to you? Is that changing you with that thought? No, it's not. Just looking at the world in a negative way, is it changing you in that moment? Subtractive is changing you in that moment if you're not careful. That's why we don't want to have negative thought, subtractive thought patterns. But it's okay to be negative sometimes. Now, if you're always negative, what will happen over time? And you'll become a member of the fraternal order of the disappointed if you keep doing it. Because you're always looking at the world in a negative way. Let's go up the food chain. What's the next one up from there?
Other people's
Other people's thoughts, which we'll save that for some other time. What's the next pattern from that?
Positive
positive
thought.
thoughts.
Positive thoughts. If you have positive, you'll see the world in a positive way. I want you to be happy and healthy. Just try to, you want to have positive energy. But seeing the world in a positive way, is there going to be any change in your performance? It's my duty, with what I know as a neuroscientist, being positive will not change you, and it will not change your clients. There cannot be change without what? Without action. And so the best patterns are what there? Proactive. Because proactive is what? It's the action that matters, guys. It's the action. If you're not creating actionable patterns, there's going to be no change. This is what happens in my field. So many people out there saying, "Gotta be positive, positive, positive," and people are trying to be positive and there's no change, and what happens?
Negative.
They get discouraged because they don't see any change. Wake up in the morning, I'm going to be positive, positive, positive today. Drive down the driveway, drive the street, some punk cuts you off. What happens to that positive? Now you're fighting with yourself and you're trying to be positive again, and then somebody runs a red light. Now what's happening? In this whole time, I had an athlete in my office this week, and she said, the best thing I've ever heard is, she said, I don't have to think positive. She said, I'm so tired and worn out spending my whole life trying to be positive, but it isn't positive. I understand now it's proactive.
Wow.
If you're proactive, see, for those of you that are religious, faith and fear cannot coexist. Faith is proactive. Faith is not stagnant. Faith is proactive. It's belief plus action. Faith is act. When you're proactive, what happens to fear when you're focusing on a solution?
You eliminate it.
There's no fear. You can overcome almost anything. I'd say anything. Okay, let's just keep going because we're going to run out of time here. Got a few more minutes. I just want to go through these, bar none, are the three greatest sources of interference in the human race. I don't care if you own a $100 million company. I work with $100 million basketball players and athletes. I don't care. Self-doubt is the biggest killer to the human race. Because self-doubt is what? It's subtractive. Let's try it, okay? You guys want to be depressed tomorrow? Do this. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, in a really strong tone of voice, say this: I can't get out of bed. You won't be here tomorrow because where will you be? In bed. You won't do anything. Or if you did this tomorrow morning, I don't want to get out of bed. That's nowhere near as deep-seated. You see the difference? So what will happen? You'll drag yourself out of bed. You'll drag yourself, man, I don't want to shave. You'll shave, but it'll be tiring. And what will happen to your day like? You'll be tired. But if you wake up, self-doubt again, greatest source of interference. It's what happened to Tiger Woods. It's why he's still trying to recover. He's got all the skills in the world, but what mindset did he get in? Self-doubt. How do we counteract it? This is the law of opposition. Self-belief is bar none the most important skill. I always start with this skill. We gotta believe in ourselves at the core. Because do other people gonna believe in us? Is there cheerleaders everywhere we go, or cheerman with pom-poms everywhere we go? Who's gonna be our own best cheerleader, guys?
Yourself.
You gotta believe in yourself. And that creates that creative mindset. When you believe in yourself, you can create. Which creative means what? Whose thoughts do you have if you believe in yourself? Others or your own? Yes. Steve Jobs said at the end of his life, he said, he's become famous for this. Steve Jobs said, most people don't bang against the walls too much. But that's a really narrow way of living. When you realize this one simple truth, that everything around us was created by somebody. And those people aren't really any smarter than us. I love that. I don't really believe there are geniuses in this world. I don't believe there ever was. But I believe there are people that learn to think for themselves and to be creative. And when you have a creative mindset, what will you create? It's not about trying to think outside the box. After I did one speaking engagement once, and I was standing there, and everyone was coming up and talking to me, and they're like, man, you think outside the box. And I was kind of tired, a little grumpy, I admit. And so I said, what box are you talking about? And they were like, oh, the box. I'm like, I'm really not trying to think outside the box. I'm just trying to think for myself and trying to figure it out for myself. I'm just doing my best to figure it out and come up with solutions. One of my close friends who I admire a lot is an amazing, amazing human being. He lives right across the road from me. I walk out of my driveway into his backyard. I was doing some training with him. He owns a company. He may be a competitor of you guys, actually, sorry. But he's one of the owners of doTERRA. And I was doing some training with him and his kids. And his parents like, oh, that's him. Can-do mindset. That's him. He's got it. And his kids were saying it. His wife saying, yeah, that's him. Can-do mindset. And he's sticking up his hands going, guys. I wasn't born that way. I still remember the year. Sophomore year in high school, things were going to pot, and I was struggling terribly. And all I remember thinking is, I either figure this out, or this is going to tank me. And that became my motto. In life challenges come, and what do? You figure it out, which is a proactive mindset, which again is creative. Let's keep going here. How do we do it? There's the skill, guys. You've got to have a can-do mindset. Whenever somebody believes in themselves, whenever you believe in yourself, what are the words that you're saying that what's happening with the neurons firing? Thoughts are your self-talk. Thoughts and self-talk are the same. A neuron fires because either you're firing it or somebody else's thoughts are firing it. So when you have a can-do mindset, whose neurons are firing?
Yeah.
This is the skill I'd love for you to have. Write this skill down. 10 can-dos. 10 can-dos. I'd love you to try this. Wake up tomorrow morning, and while you're getting ready, this is one of the benefits of being bold, because if you're bold, it takes a little longer to get ready in the morning because you've got to shave. And I tell myself 10 times in the morning, I can do this. I can close this deal. Or I can help this. You tell yourself 10 times every morning, I can do this. What happens to your energy for life? Those neurons firing are creating brain waves. Brain waves give off energy. One of the ways, the number one way that you increase the plasticity of the dorsal part of the prefrontal cortex is called intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting. What we do when we're stressed, what we do when we're tired, what we do when we're hungry is we go to food for an energy source. The problem is if you always go to food, or the sweet nectar of life, which is Dr. Pepper, by the way, if you're always going to fuel to feed you when you're stressed, it creates degenerative brain patterns. I want to end with this topic here. When you don't work hard mentally, your mind degenerates over time. What fasting does for us is when we're hungry and we're fasting, it pushes our mind to do what? To create energy on its own without food. And the more you create energy on its own, the more you're strengthening the neural processes and the stronger your mind is. We want to be in control of our thoughts. And that's going with doubt. When we start to doubt, how easy is it to let yourself go down that path when you start to doubt? That's why the mind gets weak. But if you have a can-do mindset and challenges come at you, life challenges beating you down, if you have a can-do mindset, what's happening to literally the neurology of your brain? You're getting stronger. So it's not about not having challenges, it's about what? It's how well you solve it. It's how well you deal with the challenge that makes you strong. Can-do mindset. This guy's name is David Weiss. He was number 9 free skier in the half pipe when I started working with the Olympic team. They switched me from aerialists to moguls to snowboarding and half pipe. The head coach said to me, don't spend too much time with David, we don't have enough resources. I spent one session with him. This guy's a bright, articulate kid who just simply was in the wrong mindset. One session. If you go and Google David Weiss, you'll see how many gold medals he's won. And he's completely dominated his sport ever since. Amazingly high-performing individual. That's the biggest skill. Let's go through a couple more here. The next biggest one is the negative intelligence, which is in the subconscious. Just a couple more minutes, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so the second biggest source of interference is the accumulation of what not to do. The more you keep accumulating what not to do, it's called negative intelligence. Thus, people that have negative intelligence, if they have to do something that day, what's their natural immediate response? If you have to take a test, how do they look at that?
You're gonna fail.
Oh no, I'm going to fail. Or their natural response is, if I have to be there, oh man, we're going to be late. That means they have more negative intelligence than positive. So we've got to change that. Instead of looking at life from a failure standpoint, we've got to look at it from a what?
Positive.
A success. So how do we do that? The opposite is obviously positive muscle memory. And this skill, this is not brand new science. This goes back to Pavlov and his dog in 1890. It's very simple. You've heard of this surely. It's called the 3-to-1 rule. You need 3 positive reinforcements for every 1
Negative.
meaning at the end of each day. If you can do this, or get the people you work with, get a journal. Don't just think it, write it, because when you write it, it is deeper. It entrenches the mind deeper. At the end of each day, this is what I'd love you to do. If you forget everything else, at the end of each day, clear your mind, aerate of everything you've done that day. Get rid of everyone else's thoughts, and ask yourself, what did I do best today? What did I do best? Don't be vague, because if it's vague, it's not changing the pathway. It's got to be specific. What did I do best today? And write it down in as few words as possible. Because if you're too wordy, what happens again?
Lazy.
Think about Google search engine. If you're too wordy, what happens to the search?
Lazy.
It's vague. Breaking it down is where the intelligence is. Taking complex things and breaking it down is where the intelligence. Let's do it right now. Sorry, it's so in the moment. What have I done well today? So I need to process. If I just say it, it's not authentic. What have I done well? Man, I've managed my time well. So what would I write down? Manage time well. Just the process of thinking that and writing it down, what just happened to my subconscious? I created what? A pattern. Okay, what else have I done well today? I did a good job this morning because my son was struggling because he has that. My daughter actually has some asthma and the air quality was bad. And so I was doing a coaching session this morning and I prioritized my son over that because he was worried about whether he should go to school or not. And so literally in a coaching session, I said, I'm sorry, you know me well, but I got to answer this. And I picked it up and answered my phone. So I would write this down, prioritize my son. Which, guys, those of us that love our jobs and a bit of workaholics, how hard is that to do sometimes? So I love that I did that well. I didn't even think about that till the moment. What else did I do well today? I brought good energy today. Can you see that, guys? How quick can you do that? Now write it down. If you write it down, what's embedded? Then one thing, not that you did wrong, because if you focus on what you did wrong, what pattern is being reinforced?
Negative.
So instead say, what can I do better? What can I do better? I still want to bring good energy all the time. I just want to keep getting better at that. Because energy has a big impact on people. Because if you bring good energy, what does everyone else pretty much have a choice of doing? You walk in a room of negative people, how do you impact them? bring a little more energy, positive energy than they have negative. If they trump you, then what do you got to do? You got to bring a little bit more. If you go too extreme, how do you come across? Those people that aren't in control of their mind, those people that really don't buy into mastering themselves, they're more reactive. How you can impact them is by energy. If you manage your energy well, that's how you can get in their minds. Okay, so what about skills? Number one thing we talked about today, going back to potential. What was it I asked you to do? Number one, going back to potential, sorry. You got to ask yourself, what you love? Ask yourself that all the time. What do I love the most? Now the skills, number one skill, sorry you said it. What's the number one skill for self-belief? Can-do mindset. 10 can-dos every morning. At the end of each day, what did I ask you to do just then? If you will write down the 3 things you did well, 1 thing you'll do better, that will change your life. Because when you're doing it, it's changing you at the core. What that's doing is you're taking control of your own personal narrative. What does that mean, personal narrative? Whose story do you want to be writing in your subconscious? Your own story. You want to take control of that and write your own story. Thank you for having me. You can see how much I love you.